I turned on the television the other day and was immediately accosted by the latest bit of contrived news on America's most biased news source, Fox News. It had something to do with the Juan Williams on the O'Reilly factor, which, as we all know, is the pinnacle of moderate fact-based journalism. I clicked on YouTube, searched Juan Williams, and here's what I got.
Reality. I mean, look, Bill, I'm not a bigot. You know the kind of books I've written about the civil rights movement in this country. But when I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, and I think, they're identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous.
What did he just say? I need to see that again, this time with full context unedited.
I say this to you because I don't want to get your ego going, but I think you're right. I think, look, political correctness can lead to some kind of paralysis where you don't address reality. I mean, look, Bill, I'm not a bigot. You know the kind of books I've written about the civil rights movement in this country. But when I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, and I think, they're identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous.
Oh, there was no context issue to speak of. On a nationally syndicated news network, a political contributor for Fox News just said that he gets nervous around Muslims when he gets on airplanes. Well, a few days later, the CEO of NPR held a press conference where she fired Juan, who explains it this way.
Wednesday afternoon, I got a message on my cell phone from Ellen Weiss, who's the head of news at NPR, asking me to call. When I called back, she said, "What did you say? What did you mean to say?" And I said what I meant to say, which is that it's an honest experience that when I'm in an airport and I see people who are in Muslim garb, who identify themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I do a double take. I have a moment of anxiety or fear given what happened on 9/11.
So basically, he stands by his comments, offering no retraction even after he knew he was in trouble with NPR. He apparently stands by these comments to this day. The CEO of NPR explains the situation like this.
He is not a commentator and he's not a columnist. We have relied on him over the years to give us perspective on the news, not to talk about his opinions. He has been a frequent contributor to Fox News. That's fine. We don't necessarily have an issue with that. However, we expect anybody that appears on our air, either as a journalist or a news analyst, to conduct themselves according to our journalistic rules of ethics, wherever they might be. This is really what my speech was about, wherever they might be in any forum and in any venue. And Juan, there have been several incidences over the years where Juan has strayed from that line, and we've had discussions with him. We have asked him not to do it again. This is not the first time, quite honestly, but we made a decision that really, quite honestly, at this point, after several cases of him veering from those journalistic ethics, that in this case we decided that he could no longer, that his integrity as a news analyst has been undermined by the fact that he has expressed these very divisive views, and those two things are not compatible. This is not a reflection on his comments. This is not a debate. Juan feels the way he feels. That is not for me to pass judgment on. That is really his feelings that he expressed on Fox News are really between him and his, psychiatrist or his publicist, or take your pick. But it is not compatible with a news analyst with the role of a news analyst on NPR's air.
Essentially, her reasons for firing Juan boil down to the following factors. 1. He is paid for his perspective on the news, not his opinion. The fact that he was on Fox News is irrelevant, but they expected him to conform to their journalistic standards of excellence no matter what venue he took. Point 3. Juan has repeatedly broken these standards, even after they told him to knock it off. Point 4. His integrity as a news analyst was compromised by his latest statements. Point 5. His statements were not compatible with the image NPR is trying to garner, that of unbiased opinion. Point 6. They didn't fire him for vindictive reasons. They gave him the opportunities to reform his actions, and he apparently refused. Point 7. They took action. They fired his ass. If this were the first time Juan Williams had a divisive, controversial statement, even I would let him off the hook. But this has happened over and over again, like in this clip where he made racially insensitive remarks about African Americans.
Let's talk now with our panelists who have been listening to speeches of this kind for a long time. Juan Williams, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I was just thrilled. I mean, it's almost emotional. You see a black woman, 44 years old, in that position in America, up on that stage. You know, that's breathtaking. We've never seen anything like that in America. And to see her, I think she performed very well in terms of the execution of the speech, if you want to hear from me as a political strategist. But as a human being, as an African American, it's unbelievable. I mean, and then to have the family situation, given all the tensions in black America over families, and to see that positive image there for everybody to see, not just, you know, white people or Hispanic, but for black people to see a positive, whole, functioning family where dad's involved. Man, that's just awesome.
Now, Fox News immediately went into overdrive trying to defend one of their own. That's right. Fox News extended Juan's contract a few days after this incident by another 3 years and another $2 million. The reasons boiled down to what they saw as a violation of his right to free speech. Some of them have even compared it to the culture war in the 1950s and have brought up images of McCarthy's war on communists in American society.
Where we have a cultural police that says that if you are not acting in an acceptable way, that we will go to left-leaning billionaires in this country and fund a system by which we will go on the blogs, we will create our own networks to destroy you. In loose alliance with another party, a Democratic Party in this country, and say, we are not finding what you are saying to be acceptable, nor are we finding you as an African-American man who pretends to be a liberal in our eyes to be on the page that we need you to be.
Yeah, but the irony here is that he is a liberal. I mean, the irony is he's supposed to be on their team.
Of course. But Juan Williams is throughout his career has been a person who's spoken up for civil rights and natural rights and the rights of African Americans, and is the opposite of a bigot. But what we have a situation now is the big scare, the big fear. We have a rerun of McCarthyism in the 50s. There was an organization in the 50s called AWARE. It destroyed a man called John Henry Faux, a CBS broadcaster. He went on to sue them and won millions of dollars in the 1960s for what they did. We have the same thing going on now with this loose association of so-called independent watchdogs and left-leaning media that say, you're acceptable, you're not. If you're not acceptable, we will destroy you.
Anyone with any sort of high school civics class experience knows just how ridiculous this assertion is, but I'll try to make it obvious. The First Amendment to the Constitution reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The libertarian position on the freedom of speech clause is simple. People can say whatever they want, and no one can do anything to you because of the things you say, not even terminate your employment. Fortunately for the rest of us, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided what they think the First Amendment means, most notably in the landmark decision Thornhill v. Alabama. They put it this way. The freedom of speech and of the press, guaranteed by the Constitution, embraces at the least the liberty to discuss publicly and truthfully all matters of public concern without previous restraint or fear of subsequent punishment. The exigencies of the colonial period and efforts to secure freedom from oppressive administration developed a broadened conception of these liberties as adequate to supply the public need for information and education with respect to the significant issues of the times. The Continental Congress, in its letter sent to the inhabitants of Quebec, referred to the 5 great rights and said, The last right we shall mention regards the freedom of the press. The importance of this consists, besides the advancement of truth, science, and morality, and arts in general, in its diffusion of liberal sentiments on the administration of government, its ready communication of thoughts between subjects, and its consequential promotion of union among them, whereby oppressive officers are shamed or intimidated into more honorable and just modes of conducting affairs. Freedom of discussion, if it would fulfill its historic function in this nation, must embrace all issues about which information is needed or appropriate to enable the members of society to cope with the exigencies of their period. Well, what does this mean? In other words, the Supreme Court acknowledges that the right to freely express yourself is a fundamental right of a civil society. However, in a later case, they would put limits on the power of free speech. An opinion penned by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. in Schenck v. the United States, the court had this to say: "The question in every case is whether the words used are used in such circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that the United States Congress has a right to prevent. It is a question of proximity and degree. When a nation is at war, many things that might be said in a time of peace are such a hindrance to this effort that their utterance will not be endured so long as men fight, and that no court could regard them as protected by any constitutional right. In other words, you have the right to say whatever you want, until that right impedes on the rights of other citizens, including the Congress. That means that none of us are guaranteed the absolute right to say whatever the hell we want without punishment. The situation in which we say the thing matters, and matters a great deal." But this entire train of thought is really a straw man argument put forward by libertarians or conservative Republicans in an attempt to demonize NPR, which I see as a liberal organization. The real reason is much simpler. Best explanation for why Juan was fired was expressed by the Washington Post. Juan has a First Amendment right to say whatever he wants. He does not, repeat, he does not have a First Amendment right to be paid by NPR for saying whatever he wants. See, we live in a society where we are paid according to the employment at will principle. That is, your employer, if they abide by the clauses in your employment contract, can fire you for any reason whatsoever. They can fire you for beating up a coworker or simply because they do not like you. In this case, the reason they fired Juan Williams was because Juan damaged the image they wanted to create with their subscribers and listeners, that of unbiased, fact-based journalism. Letting Juan go out and say whatever he wants, especially on a journalistically inferior network like Fox News, severely damages this image. To prevent further damage, and because Juan showed no intent to change his actions, they were essentially left with no choice. Fire his ass. So when Fox News gets on his moral high horse pretending to know what free speech is, I hope you have the knowledge now to jump up and scream at the TV, but that's bullshit. Mostly because it is. Utter bullshit. Thanks for watching. Ratings and comments are much appreciated.